Yeah, I'm Catherine Milan at Vungle. For folks of you who don't know, Vungle is a performance marketing platform for in-app video ads. So what that means is for folks here who are on the advertising side, if you guys are looking to grow your user base, not just with installs, but with folks who are going to install your app and then spend in it and engage with it, we are the guys to help you really find those good high quality value users. And on the monetization side, if you are opening up your inventory to run ads to make revenue, we help with that as well with in-app video ads that drive higher conversions, which we'll talk about, and also help you make some money. So that's me in a nutshell, and I'd like to introduce you to Artur Grigorjan, who is the Marketing Growth Director at Playrix. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Artur.
Yeah, hi. Make sure this thing is on. Yeah. I'll try to bear with my voice, at least hearing it myself. All right, so my name is Artur, and I, like Catherine introduced, thanks for the intro. I've been working 5 years in the industry, so most of the years were with Creative Mobile as marketing director, and now has changed fields recently. So I joined Playrix about a month ago, and focusing on finding new promotion opportunities for the company. So this includes both digital media and offline. So if anybody wants to talk to me later on about if you have like traffic, then we're pretty much open to any new source. And I do have to say some nice things about Vungle, because Vungle is our biggest partner for iOS and one of the top 5 partners for Android. And we actually been doing this for quite a long time now, and I have to say that I do admire the quality of the service which Vungle gives, and I highly recommend it for everybody. That's it about me.
Thank you. We didn't ask him to say that, so we're very excited that he said that. Artur is being a little bit humble, but if you guys don't know Playrix, they're located in Russia, headquartered in Russia. Some of the biggest titles in the world. We're talking about Township. We're talking about Fishdom, massive global audience, especially in APAC, which I know a lot of folks are trying to crack. It's very complicated there. So let's talk about that a little bit. You've got millions of very high value, loyal users and players that you've found in China and other surrounding APAC regions. Let's talk about that a little bit and just tell us, how are you able to do that? What are some of the things that you're looking for? Just tips and strategies for folks here who really want to expand in the East.
Yeah, sure. We actually never planned of going to Asia, like deliberately going there and trying to find something. So we actually had very good high quality games, which performed very good in the Western markets. And that at some point we actually published our games in China and noticed that wow, games are actually being very successful. So we invested very little in our promotion efforts in China, and saw the potential, saw the quality of the users which was coming in, because there aren't very big competitors for Township, because that was our first title in China. And suddenly we realized that we dominate this category in the Chinese market, so we decided to scale our efforts. And the biggest struggle was to find local partners who could deliver us vast amounts of high-quality users. And this still remains the main challenge, but it appears that most of our creatives, which are not custom-tailored for China, they still perform very good. So I assume we just simply discovered a niche. So it was never our intention to go for it, but we decided to.
You said something really interesting. You said that the creatives are tailored for the Chinese and Asian audiences. Because I know a lot of folks who are trying to break into that market, what they'll do is they'll take Western creatives and Western strategies, and they will try to repeat it in the East.
Actually, that's what I said. So we actually didn't go with didn't go with
exactly. So
yeah.
I wanted to point that out, because that's really important, right? Talk about that a little bit. Why maybe people are failing because they're doing that. Maybe some of the things, the biggest learnings that you've gotten so far by really tailoring creatives for different geos.
Well, basically, I think that if you look at the Chinese market, you do see that this is like a completely different universe out there. So games are not for a Western consumer, they seem a little bit odd, because like very different use of color, very different use of like aspects which are pointed out in the game. And I believe that going with Western creatives actually played a better role in discovery, because we were unique for the category.
I see.
And we did see the potential of even scaling this up a bit more, but when we tried to do localized assets, didn't work out quite well. We went with Chinese experts who actually said, like, yeah, we know what kind of creatives are perfect for the market. So they did custom tailored creatives. They performed worse than our existing ones. And this was actually a surprise for us. So sometimes you don't have to try to localize your efforts because you won't be able to do a good job in it. So of course it depends on the game and depends on the partner which provides those services for you. So I'm not saying this won't work, but for us it didn't work. So we're still using our Western creatives in China and it seems to be performing quite well.
That's actually makes it a lot easier for you guys then, huh?
Indeed.
And you guys are super sophisticated. And when we talk about sophistication, we did a couple of case studies with you, especially on both the demand and the supply side. We're seeing that, you're seeing 2 to 3 times higher volume. I mean, talk about that a little bit in terms of, just how you think about the marketing mix when you're thinking about what channels to go after, how to spend that money to make sure that you're growing a very high ROI user base.
That's actually a very good point. So ROI is our main factor, is our main KPI for analyzing our UA efforts. We usually try to find as many unique traffic sources as possible. So, a lot of companies are doing resale, media buying in the other countries, but for us, like for anybody else, it works better if we go directly and we outline certain publishers who are primary interest of us. So we go with small test budgets in the first. And then if we see that the margin allows us to increase the bids and go a hell of a lot higher, then we take advantage of it. Of course, we keep monitoring on a regular basis. So if the margin drops or the quality of the user reduces, then we adjust accordingly.
So for folks who are trying to think about, buying traffic, you said going direct is a lot more probably high ROI, right? Talk about that a little bit.
Of course.
Because I think a lot of people sometimes they see and they there's a lot of traffic here, there's a lot of traffic there. Sometimes it's hard to make a decision on how to buy, right? And I really want to hear how you look at it and why you think direct is better.
Yeah, well, since we're buying from pretty much all the major partners in the world, on specific markets like Asian, we try to go directly to the local ad networks if they are there. In some cases, they're not. Like in Japan, for instance, it's very hard to find like a local partner in Japan because most of the publishers, like app developers in Japan, they don't really sell their traffic. So it's hard for us to buy it. And we went with some of the few experts who said, like, well, there's definitely a lot more room for TV and YouTubers who deliver the main volume of high-quality players. We didn't try that yet, but we are exploring this at the moment. And if you go local and you don't go for resale, then you reduce the margins, the cuts which other platforms take usually. So on a regular basis, we try to identify who are those publishers from which apps we're seeing the best results, and we're trying to optimize in those channels. If we can go to them directly with bigger publisher, that works. But it doesn't work for all of them. Some do not work directly. Some do not possess the tools for working directly. Some just don't reach out back out to us after we reach to them. So trying to find a local partner, like a local ad network, that works for you. But with bigger guys, you can try to come up with a direct deal if that is beneficial for both sides. I know it should be.
Have you always taken the high LTV approach to UA, or was there ever a time when you were doing, trying to grow an install base first? Or
yeah, sure. We for new markets, we actually try to gain sufficient volume. So sometimes we reduce the margin, and we actually run a negative ROI. So this is required for us to go into a certain market and see what is the potential of growing the user base there, what is the quality of those users. So sometimes we go for worldwide campaigns with a lower bid, and they seem to be performing quite well in certain regions. If we see the potential with a global campaign, then we focus our efforts on a certain country and try to find as many local partners as possible. Usually it pays off. But yeah, when we optimize, of course, we keep the ROI model in head, but definitely reducing the margin and going for volumes is something very necessary for a new market.
After you do that, though, how important is it to pass back post-install data to your partner so that you can start to really understand, of these channels, the users who are coming in, who are highly engaged, who are going to be spending? How important is that?
We'll usually set certain KPIs in our model. So basic KPIs include the tutorial finished and the achieved level. Those are the main factors. And we really notice that when you go for, like, just number out of the sky, 70 to 80% of players who finish the tutorial, we usually know that these players will convert, and convert very good. So if a certain partner or channel cannot deliver that certain minimum of our expectations, then we really see that the quality is not that good. So we try to work on post-install KPIs with all our partners. Some of them do not work, but then we reduce the costs and take more risk on our side.
So we also work with you guys on the supply side, right? On the supply side, there is that myth, right, that a lot of folks don't want to run ads because they are worried that it's going to disrupt the user experience. Talk a little bit about that and what your approach is to that, because you obviously are running these ads. You're doing really well. We're seeing, 2 to 3 times eCPMs for you. So talk a little bit about your approach to that.
Well, we're using mostly video advertising. For us, it seems to be performing best. So, of course, we don't want to interfere in the user experience too much. But if ad revenue complements in-app purchase, I think it's beneficial for the growth, because it's a new revenue stream, and if you focus only on in-app and try to avoid ruining experience, then you will never avoid it, because it's going to be actually hard to measure whether the users are falling out because they saw an ad or because they just simply don't like your game. So, of course, we try to measure those things, but there is a certain level of extent to which we're able to do that. So, for us, it seems to be performing quite well, and ad revenue is a big part of our growth. But at the same time, we try not to bombard users with ads and try to segment them out in a better way. Of course, we're not perfect. We still have a long way to go, but we are constantly optimizing our approach in this direction. So we try to segment out the users who are paying. Of course, we don't show ads to them. At the same time, we're currently developing an algorithm to identify potential payers who are likely to pay. And for those, we try to not to show ads in the beginning, but showing them later on if our forecast didn't meet our expectations. For the rest of the non-payers and who are not likely to pay, ads are the primary monetization model.
Awesome. I think a lot of us have taken a look at sort of like the funding environment. Things are changing, right? And so there was a lot of money being pumped into UA. It's getting more and more expensive to acquire really high-value users. Any predictions on what we should expect this year and the years, beyond that?
Well, I think the same thing is going to continue as we see right now. So we see the top developers overheating the budgets, and sometimes it's practically impossible even for us to compete for higher positions in the waterfall, because it simply doesn't make too much sense for us. We are after the end profits, of course. So if it means working on smaller volumes and with a higher margin, then we'll go after that. Of course, it's a delicate balance of how you optimize your efforts, and we're actually exploring a lot of different approaches at the moment.
Any you want to share with us? I said, any you want to share with us?
I would have shared it, but some of them are in beta, so it's like best guessing right now, so I don't want to jump in too much on that. But I think that definitely more budgets are going to be invested into UA, and for smaller developers, I think it's a question if they can try to optimize on much lower scale, because for them it doesn't make too much sense to compete for higher positions in the waterfall. For us, we can afford, because we have a higher LTV, so we can afford to compete, but to a certain level of extent.
Yeah. Cool. Final thoughts. Anything you think we missed? Anything you'd like to add? Any big takeaways for folks who are trying to either A, trying to find high-value users, or B, just thinking about different ways to monetize their applications?
Well, the key takeaway is always to focus on what you're doing best and to focus on the product itself, because without the high LTV game designing model, so if your games are not able to generate significant revenues, then pretty much you won't be able to run successful UA. So those two things are in conjunction, and you always need to think about both aspects. So I would say start off by making great games, because that is what developers are best at, and then at the same time try to educate yourself in the areas of user acquisition and see what approaches are there in the market. Listen to us, listen to your partners like Vungle, listen to all the partners you're working with, because they do know what they're talking about. So do not try to compete for higher positions in the waterfall, because you'll simply burn out your budgets, and in the end you'll be left over with not the best quality of users. So yeah, my key takeaway is to focus on the game first and UA second.
So I think we can open it up to questions now. We've got about 5 minutes for Q&A. Any questions from the audience? Anything you want to ask, Artur?
Well, I want to ask how many developers are here. Can you raise your hands, guys?
You mentioned a lot of local traffic sources, especially in China. Does a partner like Vungle provide enough supply for you, or will you go after local networks like Guangdong or Tutao? Do you see a need for those kinds of channels, which are heavily local, with lots of users? Or will Vungle supply everything that you're looking for within the China region?
Thanks for the question. Actually, yes, we are using international partners such as Vungle to get a better understanding of the market. And then if we see potential, then we try to go local on those markets to find as many new channels as possible. Sometimes it's actually, this is the biggest challenge, like I said in the very beginning, to find a local partner to work with. We did experiment with a few agencies who are working with QQ, Tencent, WeChat, all that stuff, but never seem to get too big volumes for reasons unknown. Either those bigger guys do not allow Western developers to gain a bigger momentum, or something wrong with the agency. We just don't know. So I hope that answered your question. Or?
Yeah, sure. Then approximately how much of your budget would you put towards video networks in China, for instance, on Vungle? What percentage of your total budget in China would be on
what percentage?
Yeah.
What percentage of the budget?
Yeah. Approx.
Well, more than 50. So more than 50 we do spend with international partners such as Vungle, and the rest we try to cover up with local partners.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, guys. Thank you so much for attending.